So we were talking about prepared environment yesterday, and so you know that there are several aspects that you need to take care of, as a prepared adult. So, which is why you need to, in the training course, we study, the four areas. And not only you need to know the materials, but you also need to know the presentations. You need to know why they're done in certain ways. Uh-huh. It's not that, there's only one correct way to do it, but you do need to know how you can explain it to your colleagues, to parents. Definitely, you don't need to explain it to children because if you can just tell them and things work, then we don't need you, right? So prepared environments, you need to take care of the physical aspect. That's actually the easiest part, okay? But the more difficult part is actually the psychological aspect. Okay, so the psychological aspect, you need to really take care of the children's development, their psychological development. And that is why we need to observe them, and we support them at the very beginning with the practical life exercises, because it gives them a sense of a sense of independence. When they're able to do something for themselves and for the environment and for others, that gives them confidence. That gives them, a sense of independence. And also, because they know the environment, they know how to take care of it, it will eventually translate to a sense of belonging. At the very beginning, they're more like a guest. But later, when there are new children coming in, they're able to say, oh, you need some tissue? It's right there. You need to go to the bathroom and it's over there. Would you like some tea? Can I make you some juice? Okay. So it makes them become the owner of the environment. So that psychological aspect is very crucial, okay? And that's also why we only have one set of everything. With every piece of material, there's always only one set. There's no duplicates, okay? Because that really encourages the children to connect with the environment at their own level. And so through, the material, they can work with different difficulty levels. And so with the exercise, we're supporting the children to reach freedom. At the very beginning, there's a lot of obstacles because they don't know how to do things. So when you introduce them to the material, when you present the materials, it gives them access to the environment even more. And therefore, they enjoy more freedom. So we can say the prepared environment itself is a limit. So when you teach them about the limit, meaning when you show them the material, they can practice with it, when they're able to become familiar with it, that gives them a lot of empowerment. It helps them to own their own, to own this environment, and they're free to do anything in this environment because I can, right? So, and also only keys are offered to children for their exploration, because the keys will allow them to use, once they have the keys, they can use the keys to open the door to knowledge, open the doors to the world. So we don't burden the children with everything, with a lot of things, like, take color tablets as an example. There are so many more colors in the world. But for us, um, for the children, the most important thing is to know how to compare the colors and to decipher the visual quality. Once they have it, they can, tell the difference amongst colors. Then, they can explore the world of color by themselves. So we just offer them that key, not everything possible in this world. So in a sense, this is what my trainer, Joan Bettman, always said. Um, simple, less is more, she said. Less is more. The less part, meaning the keys. When you only give the essence of the culture, you are giving them a lot more in terms of the ability to explore the world. So the environment should be beautiful, yet it should be very simple. Beautiful, but simple. When you have a lot of beautiful things together, it becomes decadent. But if you choose carefully, and they can be together, and it creates a harmony. So beauty is not decadent. Beauty also means harmony. And that's why everything is essence. So that's, the psychological aspect, which is very important. And of course, human aspect. We talk so much about how you should take care of yourself, how we should maintain our stability. We should be very stable, right? Even when we encounter difficulty in our own personal life. And as a primary teacher, I would say, you really have to know you'd really have to know how you feel about freedom and limit. How do you feel about limit? Are you comfortable in setting limit? And what is your perspective on discipline? Our goal is to create an environment to allow children to develop self-discipline. Our goal is not to ask children to follow arbitrary rules to create discipline. So we definitely want to work towards self-discipline, but we are not disciplinarians. There is a difference. Okay. So we don't tell the children, you should do this and you should not do that. What we do is to use the environment to set up the limit. So like I said, every piece of material, there's only one set. There's no duplicates. That is one kind of limit. And like children, if they run in the environment, I would not tell them, don't run. I would give a grace and courtesy lesson and on how we move in the environment. But if there is any immediate danger, I might go over to the child and say, oh, come walk with me. Instead of saying, don't run. Because don't run means nothing. You only say don't. So what is the option? Should I fly? Should I crawl? Or should I walk backwards? What do you want me to do? So with the primary children, we tell them what we want them to do rather than what we don't want them to do. Okay, so there are many other aspects to that, definitely. So we actually need to guarantee, as an adult in the environment, we set up enough limits to guarantee their freedom. So within the limit, they have the freedom to move. That means your environment is safe for them to move. Okay, so you need to take care of that aspect in order to have children enjoy that freedom. So if I don't want children to run in my classroom, I definitely would not leave a big empty space, because that is an invitation to run. But if I arrange my furniture in a way that is still spacious, however, children have no potential of running straight line, then there's a possibility that would reduce running. But they still have the freedom to move about in the environment. So they need freedom of choice. They need the freedom to repeat. Okay, so they also need the freedom to communicate. And so there are several places that I visited, and of course I want children to be able to communicate with other people anytime they want, but not when they are concentrating, not when they're working, right? So I'm one of those who is very against having two children at the same table working. Some environments are set up that way. They have one table, and on each end, there is a chair. So children, one person sit on this side, the other person sit on that side. The result is that teacher go over to them constantly and say, can you concentrate on your own work? Please don't talk to your friend. You're disturbing each other. And so when I see that, I'm like, why are you setting them up? Why wouldn't you just give them one table, one person? Only with children who are older, like 4.5, 5-year-olds, they're working in small groups. In the language area and in the math area, they really need a table that can sit 2 or 3. But usually those tables are much bigger, much taller, and the younger ones would not use them. And you show the older ones like where they can get extra chairs to come sit together when they need to work together. Okay, so that human aspect, you need to be very careful about it. And I constantly tell people, even though we're a Montessori environment, it doesn't mean that, you can just make it dirty. So there are two things that's, fundamental, which is safety and hygiene. If there's no safety, there's no hygiene, there is no Montessori. It becomes that you're going to be very sorry. Because no safety, children get hurt all the time. And if there's no hygiene, children get sick all the time, and you're going to be really sorry. Okay, so that's fundamental. And so also, as adults, we need to also learn how to maintain and repair the environment. And you need to link the children to the environment as well, which is the next topic, right? How do you link the children to the environment? That's why we tell all of you to practice the materials, because you need to know the presentations. You need to know the presentation inside out, because we are not like, other education paradigm where they actually, it's a lot of work. You have to constantly design something to provide to the children in, let's say in traditional school setting. I mean, it's so much work. And I took some education courses in college, and they taught us something like you need to look at the requirements and then you have to design a lesson. In Montessori, we don't do it, not because developing lessons are not important, but because we have a very different strategy. All of your lesson plans were done when you're in training. You already have all of your lesson plans in your head, supposedly. And so when you prepare the environment, you observe the children, you see certain needs, you connect them to certain parts of the lesson plans. So which is why our training process is very different from other educational paradigm. And that is because the fundamental approach is different. We are running a lab. This is an experiment. It's just that we know already this is a successful experiment. We're repeating it, and we are trained to observe like a scientist to help the children to develop. Okay. So how do you link the children to the environment is very crucial. And I always start with something that children are familiar with. And so they create a relationship with the material, create a relationship with the environment. And slowly, I also give them the freedom to explore. So I get to see what they're interested in. And we make further links to the environment. And you need to also pay attention to their age group. Even though we're mixed age, however, they still exhibit different characteristics. 4.5-year-olds, they slowly like to poke you around with funny words. You're a poopy face. You're a stinky butt. They say words to poke their friends. They say words to poke you. And it is very 4-year-old. That is because they start to discover that words have power. I say certain things and teacher get mad. And every time I say it, she get mad. Oh my God, I'm powerful. Or like, they say something to their friends and, their friends go like, he doesn't want me to go to his birthday party. He said, because I'm a poopy butt. Children, they start experimenting with their words. And that's why with the 4-year-olds, you want to give them a lot of opportunity to do small group, but also you want to give them a lot of grace and courtesy. You want to give them a lot of spoken language activity so that they have better words to say. So different age, we still have different strategies. It's not like, we only do one-on-one presentations. We do a lot of it, but it's not everything. So when we go into spoken language, you will see that a lot of the work is actually in small group. When we go into, math, you will see some of the presentations, they're actually done in a small group, and children love them because they're 4-year-olds. Okay, and also you need to be careful with the cycle of activity. The cycle of activity it means that every piece of material, when you present it to the children, there is a beginning, there is a middle, and there's an end. Okay, so especially in practical life, you see very clearly what is a cycle of activity. So you want to wash the table. You introduce to the child, this is table washing. Let's put on an apron and you set up the work. Then you start scrubbing it. And you're done with the scrubbing, you clean up and you put everything back together and bring it back to the shelf. That is called a cycle of activity. It's very clear. If you abruptly stop in the middle of table scrubbing, There is no way the child can get out of it, because it's going to be like, yeah, you left it there. It's not done. So they're in the middle of the cycle of activity. But for sensorial, language, or math, it's much harder to decide that. Because, they can put everything back together and put it back to the shelf. You don't even know what they did. But definitely not practical life. There's just a whole bunch of water. You cannot get rid of it. Okay. So cycle of activity, I think, has a lot to do with adults. So when we do presentation at the very beginning, especially beginning of the year, I always, show children how to put things back to the shelf at the end of the presentation and assist them to bring it out. That is crucial because, children like to imitate us. And if we present that cycle of activity from beginning to end, children are more likely to absorb it, and they will utilize it as well as part of their, as part of what they do. Okay. But you also must pay attention to when the children come from toddler environment, they usually don't have complete cycle of activity. So please and please and please, if you're a school, you have toddler environment and, they are transitioning from toddler to the primary. Don't set up an arbitrary signs of readiness. Please do not do that, because I don't think there's a thing called signs of readiness to come into the primary. So children not having cycle of activity from, when they come from the toddler environment is very normal, because in the toddler environment, a lot of young children, they will just leave work in the middle of everything because they're done with it. When they're done with it, they're done with it. They walk away. They are no longer associated with that piece of material. And they also have no sense of ownership. When you work in toddler environment, children may be doing something really interesting. Someone is working and they will go over and take it away from them. Why? Because there's a thing called toddler creed. When I want it, it is mine. When I think it is mine, it is mine. Even though I gave it to you, but I want it back, it is mine. So that's what toddlers do. And when they're 2.5, they come from the toddler environment to the primary environment. They're not going to magically start having ownership and start understanding, oh, I'm in primary now. Let me put things back to the shelf. It's not gonna happen. Okay? Because toddler environment is not a prep school for primary. They're related, but they're not directly preparing them to go to primary. So there should be no signs of readiness. And, don't create that arbitrary rule of like, they have to be totally potty trained. Otherwise, they cannot come into my environment. Whoa, what do you mean by that? I mean, even though they might have what you call accent, which is I call, peeing on their own pants. It probably means that, they are regressing, because going from one environment to another is a lot of pressure. And did you know that primary classroom is so much bigger than the toddler environment? So a lot of the times their bladder, even though they can control However, it's too far away. So they have to run over to the bathroom, and in the middle of it, they already peed because, their body was not used to it yet. So there's a lot of things you need to consider. So the cycle of activity is definitely not something that you want to identify when the children come from toddler environment or from a home environment. That is something you help them to develop. Okay, so that's how you should pay attention to. Okay, and you should always observe the children's work. Okay, so Dr. Maria Montessori in the Advanced Montessori Method 1, Chapter 4, she said this: the scientific laboratory, the field of nature, where the teacher will be initiated into the observation of the phenomena of the inner life, should be the school in which free children develop with the help of material designed to bring about development. When she feels herself aflame with interest, seeing the spiritual phenomena of the child, and experiences a serene joy and an insatiable eagerness in observing them, then she will know that she is initiated. That is one of the crucial work as a Montessorian we need to do, is to be initiated. And the only way you can be initiated is by observing the children. However, Dr. Maria Montessori, in this part of this quote that I just mentioned, she said, this is crucial. The observation of the phenomena of the inner life should be the school in which free children develop with the help of material designed to bring about development. Remember what I said about the materials. After we present to the children, we can then sit down and observe what they do with it. That is the real observation. Because all of the materials are scientifically designed and proven to be effective. So once you present it to them, it is now children's work. Okay, so when they're working with it, you get to see how their psychic organs are constructed, how their psychic organs are refined. And that is the observation of the phenomena of the inner life. So without the Montessori materials, there's no possibility to observe that phenomena. Okay, so observation is way beyond, importance. And she, in The Absorbent Mind, Dr. Maria Montessori said something else. She said, the great principle which brings success to the teacher is this: as soon as concentration has begun, act as if the child does not exist. So what we're observing is that once we present something and it actually coordinates with the child's sensitive periods, there's more likely that the child would exhibit concentration. And it is the moment when you start exiting and protect that concentration. So what she meant by as if the child does not exist, it means that you need to retreat and not disturb that child. So in a sense, we're protecting, but another sense is that you are actually allowing the child to have their own freedom. Okay? So which is why we don't interrupt them. And we only interrupt when the children, we only interrupt when the children are interruptive, when they're interrupting other people, when they're interrupting the purpose of the material, when they're interrupting their own development. What they do is harmful to their development. We interrupt. Okay. So observation, there's so much that we need to talk about. And we talked about some of it, but there is going to be a lot more we're going to be talking about. And you also need to remove their obstacles. So again, if you don't observe, you don't know. Only when you observe, you would know what is the obstacle. The obstacle could be furniture. The obstacle could be your presentation. The obstacle could be the setup of the material. The obstacle could be that parent. We cannot remove the parents, but certainly we need to educate the parents. We need to entice them and help them to understand we're on the same boat. And our environment should promote the children's independence. We only provide assistance when the children need it. Our goal is to help them to do it by themselves. Okay. And you always need to reassess. Reassess means that through your observation, you are constantly updating your knowledge of the child. Okay. So once you observe something new, update it. Stop believing in what you knew about the child. Treat every day like a scientific discovery. It's so exciting to discover this child is developing something new. It's great. Okay, so we really need to develop our patience and seek truth with passion. And the truth really comes from, from the child's own exploration. It's not our presentation that is bringing about truth. Our presentation, again, I remind you, is the beginning point of children's own exploration. And we need to encourage repetition, okay? Dr. Maria Montessori in The Absorbent Mind, chapter 27, she said, the teacher, quite apart from the authority to whom she is responsible, feels the value of her work and of what she has accomplished in the form of a satisfied spiritual life, which is life everlasting and prayer in itself from each morning to the next. So we're actually satisfying our spiritual life by observing children, by allowing children to repeat. Our responsibility is to link them to the environment, but we are not doing the learning for them. Okay? So our goal is spiritual. Dr. Maria Montessori also said, again, in the same book, The Absorbent Mind, chapter 27, she said another thing, justice here is to give every human being the help he needs to bring about his fullest spiritual stature. And service of the spirit at every age means helping those energies that are at work to bring this about. This, perhaps, will be the basis on which society will be organized in the future. Nothing of these spiritual treasures should be lost. So there's a lot to think about, to unpack with that. So we really need to educate the parents That's our other responsibility. You also need to train your assistants, share your knowledge with your assistants. A little bit of the pedagogical knowledge, but also you need to be very clear about what kind of assistant you need. Assistants are not there to police the children. Assistants are there to assisting our scientific research. So they should be my assistant rather than assisting the children. There's a very fine line. And, the assistant role, we do have another lecture about it. Not right now, okay? So you also need to develop your own characteristics, meaning that you are not just a Montessori teacher. You're a human being. You need to develop your interest. I mean, of course, being a Montessorian, you develop your passion, you develop your compassion, you develop your patience, your scientific understanding of human development. But you should also have interests. You should have hobbies. Otherwise, you are going to become a person that is really not very interesting. And a very boring adult is actually not going to attract the children too well. You become a person that is not enticing. Children love adults. But if you have children in your classroom always trying to avoid you, that's a very bad sign. Right? So I want to share with you in Chinese, in Mandarin, the word teacher is translated to be 老师. Lao in Chinese means elders. And in our community, it means that someone who is well respected and have high moral standards to live up to. The second character is 师. 师 means to learn and to guide. So in a sense, it means someone who can guide and assist others in their development. So Confucius actually advocated to guide his students according to their own characteristics, according to their own characters, providing each with appropriate teaching and materials. Great thinkers think alike. They discover the truth of human development, even though thousands of years apart. So I want to end this with Dr. Maria Montessori's words. She said we actually need to develop humility. And this is what she said. This is from the Advanced Montessori Method 1, Chapter 4. She said, when she feels herself aflamed with interest, seeing the spiritual phenomenon of the child and experiences a serene joy and an insatiable eagerness in observing them, then she will know that she is initiated. Then she will begin to become a teacher. This is a repeated quote with only extra sentence at the end. She said, then she will begin to become a teacher in a real sense. Okay? So that concluded our seminar about the Montessori